All right. Now, what if the FAA was more than the Federal Aeronautics Association? I said, hey, can we get some funding? Somebody wanted ultralight funding, for research for ultralights. And I was like, man, if I could get some ultra wisdom into a community, that'd be great. So the community didn't just invest their money. They invested their time, man. This guy parked this creative. He's like, man, if they're just working on the building, then I'll make a building like a trailer, put it on the back of a vehicle, and I'll drive it around saying, hey, we need better homes across the United States. Man, that's like a passport. Ultralight, man. What's ultralight? Well, if you got things and problems in life, it's weighing you down. You can't stand up for America and stand up for God. We're like, man, maybe we need to get some preachers out there in the field so we can get better preaching in the church for those preachers. And it says, man, if they could get them to run toward the church, walk toward the church, or even drive toward the church, and then bring it from the church out into a community. And they go, man, if I translate that, we're talking about people now. And it says, well, we need people. And I says, well, how am I going to do this? I says, well, hold on. I had a buddy of mine. He was like, hey, man. And I'm a challenge him too, I'm be like, hey, this is Christmas for all, man. I'm like, Christmas for all. He says, yeah, this is Christmas, man. Look. Okay, now. So he's like, man. So I was like, okay, well, I tell you what. I says, well, I heard someone, wanted to guide people in the right direction. I says, man. I says, it's a give-take situation, I says, man. He says, well, I wanted something. They gave me what I wanted, so, you don't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. So I says, well, I knew this certain lady, was looking for this guy. And I says, well, hold on, that guy, I'm going to get him, I'm going to get him. And he says, man, that guy's pointing up. Man, I'm pointing up. I says, well, hold on, man. So I went to the desert and I says, I went and got the king, man. So hold that thought. I want to show you what I'm talking about. So I was talking to a certain flight school, man. Man, how are they going to concentrate on flying airplanes in the sky, It's like, airplanes in the sky? I says, yeah, man. I says, I tell you what. I says, well, what if I could use Congress, Senate, and the presidency to teach Americans? He says, isn't that the original plan? He says, well, if God wanted to make a promised land, he says, well, I need to show them a promise that's true, And I says, well, have you been to the Sterling flight training? It's like, well, I stopped in the summer. It was so hot, man. I was like, man, they just need a little bit of cool air. And it's like, they couldn't see. They had to wait on the weather system. I mean, you know how much work the angels do up there. It's like, man, if I cool the weather down a little bit, it's not so hot. People like, man, maybe I have time to stop. And, oh, look at this atmosphere. It's wonderful, So it's just, well, Now, if you could translate the weather into the physical environment with a mental environment and think like the angels that God wants you to be, then you go, well, it's a term limits, man. How much limit would you want God to put on your life? How much limit would you want God to put on your life? I says, well, if we could be limitless, that's probably why God said, hey, I need some people in Congress. And if those people can't get along and learn how to be the angels are supposed to be, I want Congress to argue for a while. I want them to slow down that process so that the Senate can't make any rules. And the Senate's like, man, that's the craziest idea I've ever heard. So the president says to the Senate, says, well, make it so. And then the Senate goes, well, how am I supposed to get actual resolutions that are resolutions that resolve problems to build better futures without resolving problems, and ending futures? How do I get a limitless future for the infinity of happiness that God designed? This is, well, if I had a Congress that argues, and then resolves problems, and then sends some kind of sanity, into the House of Senate, it's like, man, they're seeing those solutions and writing down that stuff on those papers, and they can send that to a presidential office. Then the office says, hey, now I go on TV and we do all this cool stuff, and it says, well, I want it to be more than TV. So it says, well, if I look at a Sterling Flight Training School, like, why? Why do I have a Sterling Flight Training School on the Enterprise Florida mission ship? It's like more than a state. It's like a ship. Shipping. Futures. Is it shipping just from this airport, just from this flight training school? No. I've got a desert in Vegas. It says, man, we've got these casinos out there. We try to get people to go out there and invest money, But if they go up there and they says, I don't know what to invest in, and they go crazy at the casino with the money they don't know what to do with, then they're out there waiting on someone. Man, I've got to invest this money, but I don't know how to invest it. And it says, well, ask the churches, And the churches are like, well, the church is only half full. How do we get schools? And it says, well, we want people to act like angels. We'll build flight schools. I says, man, those people down there in Mississippi, man, they're in a swamp. So the president, he gets on TV and he says, I need a translator. I tell those people to drain the swamp, man. And I've got hurricanes. I've got all kinds of crazy stuff, man. I need some blessings. It says, man, I tell you what. It says, man, God says, even from a distance, man. He says, even in the dark of night, hey, I've got a moon up there shining light into the darkness. It's like, how much bigger signs do you need? He says, well, if we can't understand that big moon in the middle of the night reflecting the sunlight from God, into the earth, and all that is, so they know even in the darkness there's a light. He says, well, maybe we get them to look at the TV. And if not, if they don't know how to be angels, man, and God wants you to put both feet on the ground. It's like, you don't need wings, man. He says, you don't need wings to be angels, man. It says, look, we got airplanes. Do you need to be a pilot? Some people are pilots. And some people, they might just go to the Sterling Flight Training School just to, take an introductory ride, And it's like, Sterling Flight Training, Hey, can I get an airport for God, It says, well, if I'm going out there in the sky, am I distracted on all the things that are wrong with the world? When that pilot looks down and cares about Earth and says, man, look at all that stuff going on down there. Did he get distracted? It's supposed to be, man, look at all that stuff going on down there. Hey, flight attendant. Hey, we're giving these people a tour, man. Can you talk to them about that stuff while we're flying and make it cool and interesting? It's just, well, if they can't understand the ride on the airplane as they're flying over all this stuff and looking down and saying, well, it's more than people problems, it's environment problems. Look at that stuff. How long have we been doing that? It says, well, maybe if we get a flight school that's more than a flight school, and we make the whole airport a flight school, A friend of mine, he's like, man, we need a holiday, We need to remember Jesus and church and God and the angels, So I'm walking around, I'm investigating, man. I'm like, how can we make this better? I go up to Virginia, the Department of Defense, and, one of the angels up there says, I need you to go down there to Florida and investigate. I says, investigate for what? He says, man, can you give them some positive words of encouragement, lift them up and get them working in a way that God wants them to work? I says, I don't know, man. So a certain instructor, he rides by on the road and he slows down and he stops and he looks out the window and he yells at me. He says, man, I don't know what's going on in this airport. People say everybody's arguing. I says, well, hold on, I'm in the arguments. He goes, well, why do we have a Sterling Flight Training School and an ATP training school? Because angels train people. Angels train people. Be angels on earth as it is in heaven. And it starts with the purity of your heart, Sterling Flight School. Aircraft control, Aircraft control. Man, what is aircraft control? Well, if I go down over there and I says, man, I'm going to land my plane over here. And there's a bunch of trees and stuff here. We need wood, chop it all down. We're building houses and stuff. Oh, man. Now they got all this wind and stuff knocking the houses down because the wind's like really fast. Man, have you tried to land an airplane in that, man? It's like, we're doing acrobatics, man. I need some more. All right, come on, man. How can we help climate change, man? You know, there's a certain instructor, he says, hey, do you work here? And I says, no. No, I mean, Jesus went out there and says, I got to get some people to go to church. I said, well, if we got climate control, you know, it's like, maybe I get some people to go to flight school. It's like, man. So, you know, there was a certain instructor, he says, man, what are we going to do about climate change? And he says, well, you know, we get those people to understand, you know. They're warring in the desert. What do we do about that? And he says, nobody could understand those army people, man. They go, man, those army engineers were engineering more than just the lands that you see and the trees that you see and the sky above and the water system and filtration and, you know, all of that stuff we got to do to fix the desert. He says, well, we got to start with the mind. He goes, well, we'll all suffer together. So they sent the U.S. Army over there in all them deserts, man. And they come back all kind of messed up. He says, well, if we can't fix it in the desert, we'll send our guys to the desert. They'll get all messed up. We'll bring them home and we'll fix it from here. And then from here, we'll launch a mission like Ronald Reagan says, and says, man, all those helicopters, you know? And it's like, man, all those helicopters, you know? It's like, what do you mean? All those helicopters are trying to land in the desert, man. It's like, how much supplies can we take over there in the desert? They're designing bigger, bigger, and bigger and better helicopters. And it's like, well, maybe if we design a better mind. So it's like, wow. So they couldn't understand that clear vision campaign. It says, man, I can't take it. I can't believe how they're treating our veterans. We sent them over into the desert to be destroyed so we could bring them back here and rebuild them back up into something better and then show the world that this is how it's done. We don't have to keep sending people to a desert to be destroyed if we could show them how to go to a desert and be rebuilt. Why do we have those Navy SEALs, man? You know, man, if they get in trouble in the desert, the Navy SEALs know how much that water is important. You know? The Navy SEALs swim in that water and to the point they almost drown because they're like, man, I've got people in the desert drowning in sand. So when you go to that desert to rescue those people, I want you to remember that they didn't have the water that you almost drown in. So it's like, into the desert they went. We got a forest, you know, we made Army Rangers. You know, we got a song that says home on the range, man. But if the range doesn't have any forestry, how can that ranger make it home? You know, you want to know about the Air Force? Hey, we got propeller heads, man, over here. We got an air patrol, you know? And man, you want to talk about a rundown. If all else is lost, man, we got those Marine Ones, you know? It's like, man, they've lost their minds so much. I got to send in the Marines. And they says, well, who's going to save the Marines? And we said, start the Space Force.